Hafaday KUAM, Adriana Cotero here, and I am joined with the Superintendent for Private Catholic Schools here on island, Dr. Juan Flores. Hello, Dr. Flores. Thank you for joining me and speaking with me to give all those in the community an update on where we are at as far as private schools in the calendar year.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm glad to join you. Just to be clear that the Catholic schools are not the only private schools on the island, but a significant group because there are 14 Catholic schools within the Archdiocese of Agana. So just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yes, of course. So with those 14 schools, where are we right now? So I know, it's been we're in our third week, and since then, I know students have not been going to school. So has there been a distance learning program for the different 14 schools?
There has been. Obviously, they range from minimal distance learning for kindergarten students in the nursery kindergarten schools. For daycare, there is no distance learning. And they have some of those kids all the way up to the high schools where there are some more structured programs. Most of the schools are using formats like Google Classroom to present information and to collect assignments from students.
When did the Catholic schools implement the distance learning program?
Some of them started that very first week that we were all told to stay home. But some of them actually, we gave some students, or some schools gave students that first week off. That was their spring break, and have them adjust to the fact that they were no longer in school. And so this week, some of the schools are still meeting, the teachers are still meeting students or running lessons, but probably by Thursday and Friday, there won't be any more classes or any academic work this week.
By Thursday and Friday?
Correct. Holy Thursday and Good Friday, we probably won't have.
But it picks back up come Monday, right?
Correct.
Okay. So with the distance learning, is it online classes, or so you said that you're using Google Classroom, so are teachers coming on the screen? Are they giving lessons and courses, or how is the information being provided to students?
It depends on the teachers and it depends on the grade levels. So the older kids, middle school and high school kids, are probably having more interaction through things like Google Classroom. But even in the elementary schools, there's some teachers who are recording themselves and then putting videos on so the teachers can see them, and then getting feedback from the kids. But it really depends on the grade levels. And also it depends on what the teachers have decided they wanted to do with the students. For some teachers, what they did was that first week, they set up time minimizing interactions with others. Obviously, they set up times for families to come and pick up textbooks and other materials at school, so that the teachers would just send out assignments, interact with the kids, maybe do lessons, but then they'll also have their textbooks to work with.
And what about any students or families without internet access? Has there been any issues with this?
With some of the families, that the schools have worked that out with the families. They first found out if there were any issues with internet access, because there's an equity issue. We can't expect kids to do the same work if they don't have access to the same equipment. I know some of the schools are even lending kids some hardware, some laptops if they don't have them, or iPads if they don't have them, so that the kids will still be able to get onto some kind of electronic device.
So as far as you know, there are no plans to end the calendar school year early, and that students will be receiving a full report card come the end of May.
That's our intention. Now, when that actually ends may depend on how the principals feel the teachers are getting. As I've mentioned to you before, there are two principles involved here. One is that for those kids who are not in high school, that the kindergarten to 8th grade kids, we want to make sure that they're going to get a year's worth of work down packed so that they're prepared for the next grade. Should they be ready to, be promoted. And for most of those kids, they will be promoted. For the high school kids, we need to make sure that the high school students are actually doing work where they're earning high school credit. That's especially true of the seniors, who are not only earning credits, but now earning a high school diploma. So it's not just the amount of time that we're measuring. I think the teachers are measuring the quality of work more than just the time.
Right, and actually that leads me to another question, just because I had also spoke with Harvest Charter School about, and they're doing online courses as well, and they mentioned that grading has been a little bit a little different considering that we're in the middle of the pandemic. Is there anything different as far as the Catholic schools goes with grading? Is there a little bit more leniency, as it might be more difficult for parents to even be able to be there and help their children during these times? When they might, and they're not used to online learning. They're not used to having to learn this way. And some parents are essential workers. They're, frontliners or first responders, and they're not home with their children.
Absolutely. First of all, I think that for the most part, the teachers are making themselves available so the students can email them or get on a chat and ask questions if they need help. So a lot of the help can come directly from the teachers, and the teachers are giving feedback on the work their students are doing. But I don't know if I'd use the word lenient, but I definitely would say that the teachers are being reasonable, that they know that the students are not coming in every day. They know that the students are not sitting at a desk, for 45 or 50 minutes. For some teachers that are assigning, let's say, a video online to watch, I mean, the kids might do that 3 or 4 times, depending on what they're watching. So how the teachers assess whether or not the kids have learned something, I think it's going to be pretty different from what we've had before.
Okay, and what about, we've had quite a few parents reach out on this question, and maybe you can clarify for everyone about tuition. Now, I know that some of the parents that have personally reached out where their students their children are students of St. Anthony's, and there's a 10% reduction for tuition payments that they just received. But what about parents that may not be essential workers and they cannot make the means right now? And,
I think that's a great question, and I know that the principals are prepared to work with all the parents who are now, especially parents in retail or parents who've worked for the hotels or parents who are in the restaurant business, that they're not getting the salaries that they're getting. And I think I would like to encourage them to reach out to the principals. They shouldn't think of it as a shameful thing. It's a reality. And while that puts a lot of the burden on the schools and to figure out how to keep up with expenses, how to continue to pay their loans, how to pay salaries, I'm trying to work with the schools to find the wherewithal to get them the support they need so that they can continue the distance learning with the kids, support those families that are in trouble right now financially, and to make sure that we reduce the anxiety because of what's going on with the pandemic.
So this could potentially be maybe postponing payments or just, I guess, working it out with the different principals at every school.
That's what I would say. And I think that most of the principals, and this is not new, most of the principals are listening to what the parents' situations are, and making sure that they're as supportive as they can be. It's very different from back in the old days when some of us went to Catholic schools. Sometimes the principal would say, okay, if you can't pay tuition, go and mow the lawn this Saturday. Well, that doesn't help pay somebody's salary. So we're not doing that. So the principals, I will say that the principals are challenged, and the principals are trying to make sure that they're going to continue to be financially solvent, but at the same time be very sensitive to what families are going through.
Of course. And I think I saw online on your guys' website, there was a 24-hour helpline. Is that something that they could also reach out to? Parents can call that number to maybe be directed to the right person to talk to?
That's for the archdiocese in general,
Okay.
for any spiritual counseling or anything that they need help with spiritually. I would say the best bet for the parents, if they need any help, I don't know about 24 hours because I wouldn't want to give out principals' phone numbers so they get a call at 3 a.m. But I think it's reasonable that during the day or at some point, if they use email, parents should definitely communicate with the schools, because that's the bulk of the work that the principals are doing actually, is Zoom conferences with their teachers, meeting with parents, talking to parents, making sure that things are going well. I don't think that the principals are taking a vacation right now, and that's true of the teachers as well.
So as far as tuition and the distance learning and the different coursework, it varies between the different private schools then? There's not any set standard across the board?
Right. Most of, I mean, our schools are independent, with their own payroll offices and their own budgets. And I think what they're trying to do is just make it as fair as possible. If the schools can't afford any kind of discount, they're offering it. If parents come to the individual schools and they say that they're challenged financially, I know that the principals are listening to them.
And do you often meet with the different administrators? Maybe even via Zoom right now?
We've done it. We were on a Zoom conference call this morning, mainly because of the consolidated grant application that's coming up. But we meet maybe twice a week, at least twice a week, or if somebody brings up a really pressing issue, and I just call for a Zoom conference. I mean, I've invested in a Zoom account so that we're not going to be limited by the amount of time we go on a conference.
Are you able to tell us any of the different dialogue that's been taking place recently with the administrators and yourself, whether it be any common questions that they're receiving from different parents or any feedback?
I think the financial issue is probably the most common. If there are concerns from the parents, it's that, well, there are two actually, there's a range of questions that have to do with, one, that they feel that the students are not getting enough work and not getting enough support. But then I'm also hearing from some parents where the students are getting too much work, that the teachers are expecting too much, more than they'd like to see. And a lot of that has to do with what the families are doing themselves, because if the parents are not home, families are not home, they may not see what the kids are doing. But if the parents are home and they're seeing that their kids are overwhelmed, they may have reason to raise concerns. And again, I encourage them, if they have any concerns, to call or email their school principals and to get clarification. I know that in some situations, there have been some misunderstandings, and that's led to parents drawing conclusions about things happening or not happening. And I think that's something that they can work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I had mentioned about, some parents might be essential workers and they might be first responders and frontliners, and they can't sit there and do the lesson plans with their kids throughout the day.
Right.
And then come home after these long shifts, and then I'm sure they're all tired.
That's the last thing they want to do, right? Is do schoolwork. But so, and if their students are challenged, I think they themselves should take the initiative. I mean, they'll do it in a classroom, right? They'll get up and ask a teacher for help in a classroom. They should feel free to do that only in an electronic way or a digital way, not necessarily by doing it physically.
And what about, so another common question, of course, is seniors and graduation as far as a ceremony goes and receiving diploma. And then you had mentioned to me that also for kindergarten.
So that's my joke, only because I didn't go through a graduation when I finished kindergarten. You were probably not born in 1976, but some of us remember a disaster affecting our own high school graduations when we had Typhoon Pamela in 1976. We all eventually graduated. I mean, we all had ceremonies, just wasn't what was planned. This is a greater challenge. I mean, there's a chance that that we're not going to get through this quickly enough so that there can be some kind of, bringing everybody together for a graduation. So some of it now is just a wait and see, right? To see how long it is before the governor is comfortable saying, okay, it's safe for us to congregate now. It's safe for us to come together. My guess is that's going to come later rather than sooner. And so I think for those students, I feel for them, because I think most of them have probably waited since kindergarten 13 years to graduate from high school. They're also, for many of them, if their plans are to leave the island or to do something different, their day-to-day lives are going to be changed. And it's unfortunate that there won't be a day or an occasion to mark that transition. But I think that maybe they're more resilient than we think, because I think they understand what's going on in our community.
Of course. So for those that need to, if they want to reach out to the different principals, they can find their emails and contact on the archagania.org website?
Or just go directly to the school websites. And most of the parents should have that. They should have phone numbers and email addresses for the schools. Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or any messages you want to share to students that are going to be, and parents?
I think the only message I want to share is just to make the most of what we're doing. I think that learning takes place in different ways. And so this may be a challenge to them. For many of them, especially for the high school seniors, this is a great way, or at least it's an opportunity to learn about distance learning, because that's what they might do at the higher education level. But for many of them, I hope that what they'll do is take care of themselves, stay safe, and then appreciate the relationships they have with each other, even though they're not seeing each other.
Mm-hmm. Of course. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and also updating the community on, all these questions that they have had.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm Adriana Cotero, and we just spoke with Dr. Juan Flores. He is the superintendent for the private Catholic schools here on island. And as he had mentioned, if you have any further questions or concerns, to contact the principals of your school via email or calling.